Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today on the channel is all about the infamous Project Blackwing, the hell it causes for those unfortunate enough to receive it, and what really happened in the galaxy when ships were plagued by Blackwing. So, strap in and be prepared for the complete breakdown of Project Blackwing. Project Blackwing was the Galactic Empire's Imperial Military Department of Advanced Weapons Research project that oversaw unlocking immortality. The project resulted in the discovery of the Blackwing virus, also known as the Sickness, an infectious viral agent which was accidentally created while working on an experiment to receive necrotic tissue in a secret research facility located on Dandaran. And by the way, this is all from the Legends section of Wikipedia, and so it's not necessarily canon. Some of it is, not all of it. Hopefully they do make it canon, but I use the Legends section because the canon section had barely anything. Anyways, back to it. So, not looking good so far for any unfortunate soul who was unlucky enough to catch it. When the plague fell into Darth Vader's hands, Vader being Vader commissioned an Imperial scientific team to work on the virus and turn it into a weapon the Empire could utilize for their various needs. Unfortunately, they succeeded. Well, fortunate for the Empire at least. And all this research and creation was done aboard the Vector, an Imperial Class 1 Star Destroyer. And finally, the disease was finished. And the once plague had been turned into, well, you guessed it, codename Blackwing. After that, everything was great for the Vector and its crew. Until, of course, an accident occurred that year on the Star Destroyer Vector. And ironically, the disease was unleashed, but not onto some unfortunate souls they deemed punishable and wanted to test on, but to themselves. The Blackwing virus was unleashed into the Vector, and that's where all hell broke out.
Sir, their comm is up, but we have no response.
Destroyer 316, this is the commander of the Purge. As a result of your repeated failure to acknowledge our distress call, I hereby authorize the salvage of your ship. Prepare to be boarded.
Now, before we get into the rest of the story on board the Vector and take a look at what the disease actually was, so let's hop into the science behind it. This sickness, later known as Imperial Bioweapons Project 17-1A, or the Blackwing virus, was a disease that synthesized through the use of alchemical techniques practiced by the members of the Sith Order. The pathogen was not the goal of alchemical experimentation, but was instead created during attempts to concoct an elixir to achieve immortality, like I said earlier. And the mixture that generated the virus required several ingredients, the most crucial of which was the rare Murakami Black Orchid. The orchid was fully self-aware and highly force-sensitive, that could communicate telepathically with other force-sensitives, and when added to the other components of the immortality elixir, would create a potent and deadly viral infection, which we now know as Blackwing. For synthesis to be successful, the mixture had to be enriched within a living being. Through the use of mechanical pumps and surgical tubing, the alchemists would create a circuit between the organic host and a fluid reservoir into which additional ingredients could be added. The final product was a yellowish-red liquid that would run throughout the body of the organic host, through the tubes and into a pump before being cycled back through into the body. And when the fluid was completed and ready to be collected, the circuit could be broken in order for the viral fluid to be siphoned into storage. Other methods of production and experimentation included the use of human lungs as a biological host in which the virus could be enriched and studied. When created for the purpose of immortality, the finalized mixture was being ingested by the alchemist. Conversely, when the mixture was crafted specifically for the creation of the virus, a highly refined fluid version of the sickness could be collected from the living host and stored within airtight tanks. But, having said that, how could one get this pathogen? Like the crew and others on board the Vector, Imperial Bioweapons Project 17-1A was an extremely persistent and audacious pathogen. The disease easily crossed species barriers and transmitted itself within a population quickly and in myriad ways. Humanoid species susceptible to the sickness included Bothans, Dathomiri, Delphinins, Devarians, humans, Ithorians, Mon Calamari, Rhodians, Celestins, Trinotians, Twi'leks, Whipwoods, Wookiees, and Zabraks. The virus could also infect plant life, such as sentients Neti and Murakami Orchid itself. Additionally, non-sentient creatures like the Reptomalian, Tauntaun, and Rancor, which are pretty famous, were susceptible to infection. Even dead tissue could become infected, as was the case with human Von Longo, who was killed 2 weeks prior to an outbreak. The transmission rate within a contained population was nearly 100%, when excluding those naturally immune to the pathogen. which would be pretty great if you were. And the first individual to fall victim to the virus during an outbreak was always the organic host within the fluid circuit that synthesized the viral mixture. After that initial carrier fell victim to the disease, there were a number of ways by which the sickness could spread in a population. The most direct method of transformation was a bite from an infected subject. I know, pretty classic, but bite wounds would produce the most drastic symptoms and deposit the highest number of viral agents into a new victim. Another way by which this transformation could be achieved was through contact with bodily fluids of the infected. The virus could be carried by saliva, blood, or gelatinous coagulation of fluids that ran through the bodies of the victim. If any of these liquids came into contact with the fluids in an uninfected subject through an open wound or mucous membrane such as an eye, or of course kissing, etc., the sickness could enter the body and replicate. A method of convenience that was exclusive to the weaponized version of the virus was airborne transmission. When stored within airtight tanks, the virus could be released into an atmosphere by allowing for the tanks to be subjected to a leak. In its airborne strain, the virus could transcend all quarantine and containment efforts to reach new hosts and accumulate more victims. In this form, the disease could even affect individuals with biohazard gear or stormtrooper armor, both of which were specifically designed to prevent chemical or biological attacks. So after all that, let's take a look at the symptoms before getting back into the story. The symptoms experienced by those who contracted the virus through airborne contagion were drawn out over a longer period than those experienced by bite victims. When the virus activated within a subject, they would immediately suffer from a light cough and draining sinuses. The respiratory difficulties would gradually worsen, leading to labored breathing and deep, rattling sounds of mucus buildup in the lungs. The patient would quickly experience gastrointestinal abnormalities, including vomiting and nausea. The skin would turn a pale green or gray and would break into heavy perspiration, similar to a bite victim of the blackwing. Unlike bite victims, these symptoms continually worsened over the course of several hours, including conditions like fever, internal bleeding, vomiting, blood, seizures, respiratory arrest, and cardiac arrest soon followed, as well as general lethargy and pain. Other patients suffered from internal and external hemorrhaging and even comatose. Those who avoided comatose usually fell into a state of delirium, experiencing vivid hallucinations that ultimately led to aggressive madness. This would cause victims to turn on one another or commit suicide. Others died from their seizures, cardiac arrest, or blood loss. For the bite victims, it was a quick transition and caused some species to see extremely altered hallucinations. But now, let's head back and check out what happened on the Vector. Since the virus is able to live on its own and is self-aware, the infected took control of the ship and almost infected all the others on the ship. So, they used their massive Star Destroyer to attack and cripple the Imperial prison barge, aka the Purge.
Destroyer 316, this is the commander of the Purge. As a result of your repeated failure to acknowledge our distress call, I hereby authorize the salvage of your ship.
Even after being crashed into by thousands of undead, it got much worse for the crew of the prison barge, the Purge, because due to their ship taking the massive amount of damage it did, it forced the crew inside the Purge to relocate and flee to the infected Star Destroyer, which all the Blackwing subjects were on. Which I presume you can tell didn't go so well for the rest of the alive crew from the Purge. If you guys would like a full video on the story of the Star Destroyer Vector and what the Blackwing did to it, I'm happy to. But this video is a complete breakdown of the Blackwing virus, a truly evil pathogen. But hopefully you enjoyed this video / breakdown. Feel free to go and check out my other Star Wars videos I currently have up. But other than that, goodbye.